Well, here we are. We're at the entrance to the Omni projection room. Of course, you can see "Do Not Enter," but with us, that just doesn't matter, does it? Let's come on in. Here we are again. Caution. We are in physical danger entering this building.
The sign always scared me, but then I asked what I mean. It's evidently if there's a fire, some kind of chemical is, and you have like 2 minutes to get out before all the oxygen is sucked from the room or something. So it's an adventure going in here.
Oxygen will be sucked from the room. Of course, we're not talking your typical UA theater here now, are we? We're here in the control room. About how many of these facilities are there across the United States?
There is around 40 worldwide.
And so there is basically what, about the same number of films out generally, or is there less?
Well, only a few new films come out every year because they're expensive to produce and because there are so few Omni theaters.
What, I don't know, this may be getting into, I'm forgetting his name, Robert's realm, but in terms of like anything technical that you
I can tell you, Omni film format is the largest film format in the world. It's 70 millimeters. I can tell you that these film platters that you see weigh 250 pounds apiece, and I can tell you that a few weeks ago, for the first time, someone dropped one of them and film spewed everywhere, and it took quite a while to roll it back on the reel.
You schedule how many shows a day? Generally, I mean, it's about...
We have more than 50 shows a week.
In terms of keeping, I mean, because there's, what, one print, or is there more? How is everything set up to...
Well, we can have two platters here ready to go at the same time so that we don't have to lift off the 250 pounds each time that we want to change a film.
It's pretty interesting. Is this like ever broken and like decapitated anybody? Yeah.
Not as far as I know how to. The fire's really good. You should come see it. It has some footage from the San Francisco earthquakes and volcanoes erupting, and it's very good.
Has this film won any awards, or is it? How do you select the film that comes here? Why the Ring of Fire if there are others out?
Well, we do pre-testing of our audience to see on just general subjects, to see what our audience, what they think is more interesting. And then when the films are actually made, we do audience testing to see how they react to a particular film and make sure that if they said they were interested in volcanoes, that this film holds up and is interesting to our audience.
Is it something, I mean, like in terms of the test audience, something that just anybody can come in and do, or do you select certain people, or how does that work?
We just do it during a regular public show.
Okay. And speaking of public, here comes some now.
Over 1 million people a year come to Omni shows.
And they pay how much per show? Is it
$5.50 general admission, $3.50 for adults 60 and over, and children 5 to 12.
Okay, well, we're here in the projection booth with the projectionist, Robert.
Right.
Robert, okay. Exactly what's about to happen. I see that, the reels are about to run down over here.
That's right. First of all, let me show you the single most important part of an IMAX film system. What makes it possible to present a very large image on the screen and still have it look good. That is the frame size, or the size of the individual picture that we're projecting.
Which is 70 millimeter?
It's called 70 millimeter 15 perf. Okay. In standard film, standard 70 millimeter film that you occasionally see, runs on this same blank strip, but each frame is only about 1/3 the size of one of these frames. That's called 70 millimeter 5 perf. This stuff has a very large film image to begin with, about 2 inches tall and 3 inches wide, somewhat around 10 times the surface area of a commercial 35 millimeter film frame. That's what allows us to make that really huge picture in the theater still look good, because you've reduced the number of times you have to magnify it. Film runs horizontally rather than vertically. One frame sits beside the next so that you can, in fact, put a lot more picture on standard size film. Get this started rewinding again.
What is the main difference between here OmniMax and then you also have IMAX?
There's a class of theaters that use this same equipment, this same film, generally known as IMAX theaters. The difference is a difference in screen format in the theater. An IMAX theater has a very large, basically flat screen, slightly curved, but essentially very flat, and indeed very tall as well. They may be upwards of 60 feet tall and 80 feet wide, the screen is. The OmniMax format works on a curved surface, a dome surface, to wrap that picture around the audience a little bit farther than you can do with a generally flat screen. But the equipment is essentially the same except for the projection lens itself. We can come up here. The heart of the setup, then what makes IMAX and OmniMax be what it is a different film transport mechanism. Instead of the traditional arrangement that uses a bunch of toothed sprockets that jerk a bit of film, stop it, send it on, this is what's called a rolling loop projector. It uses compressed air in this big steel rotor to move film. It moves film very gently, providing a little cushion of air for it as it goes through the projector. It allows you to run film at very, very high speeds, which is what you have to do with a large frame, simply because each frame takes up a lot of space. Physically, you have to move film really fast, around 340 feet a minute in this format. And this mechanism allows you to move that film at very, very high speeds, and at the same time not tear it up.
Is it still 24 frames a second?
It still runs 24 frames a second. Okay. The difference being that in an IMAX, OmniMax format, 24 frames of film is about 5.5 feet long, as opposed to commercial 35 millimeter film, that's 1.5 feet long.
Could you explain to us kind of what your
The first thing you have to do when loading film to a very large projector is grab yourself 40 or 50 feet worth of film in your hands, enough to get through. This reel of film you see right here, about 40 minutes worth of film, somewhere around 15,000 feet of film, is about, again, as much film as it takes to show, a 2.5 hour commercial 70 millimeter film. The difference being, of course, that this stuff runs through a lot faster. So if you happen to go to a 70 millimeter movie house where they actually have a 70 millimeter film, and they don't have a lot of those lately these days, Far and Away, I think, is the last one that was out, you'll see a platter of film, something like that.
So have you ever had any accidents in here?
One always has accidents. We're fortunate in that the film equipment here is it's Cadillac. It's very good. Yeah. And this does not tear up film very often. And we're very careful, and we try not to tear up film very often.
So this is the lens itself.
It doesn't look impressive. It's a beautiful piece of glass. Very wide angle lens, almost 180 degree fisheye lens.
But there have never been any projectionist decapitations or anything, nothing like that?
Haven't gotten my tie caught in the mechanism yet.
Okay.
We haven't even lost a finger here in 10 years. Now, we have to find the start frame on here to set the start frame right behind the lens. The one drawback of an IMAX film system is that it sounds like a freight train in action. It's fairly noisy. Now we have our soundtrack over here. Runs on 6-channel 35 millimeter audio tape.
You hear up in the preview of the film itself that the audio system is capable of doing some damage.
Oh, certainly it could if you wanted to turn it all on at full power.
Is there ever
at any point? I don't know exactly what the peak sound output measured in decibels is. Our standard soundtrack runs at about 95 dB with peaks up at around 105. I assume you can get about 120 or 125 dB out of this system easily if you want to. We're not running anywhere near capacity.
But I mean, secretly, you guys don't come up here at like midnight or anything?
Of course we do.
And crank it?
Of course.
So everything is completely automated, run by computer or what?
Almost nothing is automated here.
Nothing.
It's run by genuine human beings.
Cool. So you see, like out in the theater, there is a little booth. What exactly are you seeing out there?
Besides, well, you have the theater lighting and sound controls are there, and a person stays there throughout the show monitoring picture and sound to make sure everything is going well. There's a mechanism involved up there called, well, it's a bit technical, it's called field flattener change, which enables you to remove really large bits of dirt and dust that get stuck on the screen. It's an ability they don't have at 35mm houses, so that if you see a big hair get stuck on the screen, that may stay there for quite a while in a 35mm house. We have a mechanism that allows us to, in fact, remove that and keep the screen clean.
Wow. Because like a small hair here will
It's
become...
magnified 580 times when it hits on the screen. A human hair is about 40 feet long and looks like an anaconda on that screen. It's huge.
And so at this point now, and inside, everybody is...
We're now flying over the city of Fort Worth in the theater.
Were you out around that when they shot that sequence?
No, I didn't have any particular involvement in that. I was in here running movies. While everybody else was out having fun.
The projectionist way of life.
That's right. We stay in these dark, small, purple areas and run the movies. In this theater, we use 6-channel 35mm audio tape. It is recorded at 35mm film speed. It's about 18 inches a second, which gives you a couple of different things. First of all, it's audio tape that's very wide and runs fairly fast, so that you, in fact, have a lot of room physically to put sound information. You can put a lot of sound on standard magnetic tape, and you can get very good sound reproduction. It provides an easy mechanical way to interlock film and sound. Since the tape is run on a little sprocket here, there's a mechanism inside the projector which simply moves this sprocket the same speed as the film is running, so that you put start frames on both of them, lock the two together, and the sound tape will just go at the same speed that the film is running at. They're interlocked that way. It's a strictly mechanical system rather than digital. Newer theaters are using 6-channel CD systems where the interlock has to be digital. The rest of the IMAX sound system here is largely a question of amplifiers. We work on power rather than sophistication, I think. 72 individual amplifiers, each one hardwired to one of the speakers in the theater, provides a total output of about 18,400 watts, of which who knows how much of that is being used at any given time in a film. There's certainly a lot more capacity in the system than we would ever use.
Right. Have you got, have you come up here? I guess I asked this a while ago, but have you ever come up at midnight just to see?
Oh,
You could
certainly.
break the foundation or something?
No, but you can make it extremely painful to be in the theater if you want. You can, in fact, make it louder than you want to stay in there.
Creativity. I mean, the film is pretty much mixed when it comes, obviously, but can you affect certain...
We can change it almost any way that you can imagine. However, the more you change it, the more you defeat what the filmmaker wanted it to sound like.
Right. Okay.
So I tend to find it my responsibility to run as close to the filmmaker's own vision as possible. I try not to mess with their sound too much. One does little things here and there, but no, I try to get away from that. It's hard to resist. It's hard to resist because you got this beautiful set of beautiful mixing board and sound controls up in the theater. You can make the back channels do whatever you want. There's an equalizer. You can change around anything you want. But that's hazardous, and what you may be doing is more harm than good. The title is pretty self-explanatory. Gives you a pretty good idea of what the movie's all about.
What about this format, like in terms of mean, granted, this is a learning facility when you get right down to it,
Right.
but you don't see more films that, I don't know, capitalize just on the thrill.
There are almost no limits to what a filmmaker can do in that area. I mean, they can make you ill within the first 30 seconds of the film if they want to. There is a pretty deliberate movement within the film industry, within the big frame film industry, and among filmmakers to avoid that. Some of the films that were made early on when this technology was very new were strictly for thrills, riding around on roller coasters and flying in airplanes and stuff. I believe filmmakers and the theaters, the whole network of theaters, wants a bit more sophistication these days. They always include something.